Contact Report 841 Translation. Tuesday, the 11th of April, 2023, 7:32 a.m.
Hello, greetings Bermunda, but I wasn't expecting you. Welcome and greetings anyway. Was going to be in the office a bit later to work, but if you come here, it is also fine with me.
Greetings, dear friend. I am sorry to tell you that Florena, Neefos, and I will also be absent for the next while and will not be back until Ptaah. This will probably not be until the month of July.
Well then, but I guess there are problems regarding the statutes and bylaws, which we are revising and renewing with the committee. Yes, because...
Yes, that is necessary, but it will be that a person will get back to you and you can continue. Consequently, you don't have to worry about that.
Then everything is fine.
Yes. Florena and Neefos have already left, but I am still to inform you, so I will come to the center. But I am in no hurry to leave again, because I still have some things I want to discuss with you. Since I am very interested in your experiences with Svath and already have a lot of knowledge of his annals, which Ptaah has made available to us, I am also making an effort to look up various times where you have been together. So I was also in Peru with the Incas in South America at the ancient site of Machu Picchu, as well as in Bolivia at the hilltop site of Pumapunku, which you visited in the past more than 6,000 years ago. When I went there, it was very strange for me, because I have never experienced such cultures before, as well as what I saw in very ancient Egypt about 5,500 years ago, when you were with Svath at this King Wahanisi, to which I would like to know what.
That's true. The scorpion played a very big part in that, but I don't want to talk about that openly, as I also don't want to talk about anything else.
It's not like you're obliged to then retrieve our conversation later and write it down as well.
Of course not. I forgot that again. I just don't want to talk about these things openly and say what really was and will also be in the future.
I understand that, but when you talk to me, you know I don't I can't tell human beings of this world. But you two, you and Svath, you have seen and experienced so much together in the past and in the future when you were traveling for so many years, and that interests me very much. It is certainly much more than what is contained in the written record of Svath, for details are not recorded, but only rough details, which are sometimes quite meager, as Ptaah has let us see in the annals. It is also puzzling to me how you, as an Earth human, have spent all these years, especially because the Earth humans are not so, while you, like us, have spent much.
Without that Svath just...
I am aware of that, but that it is still not apparent to you, I am surprised.
That is precisely because Svath also has the method. Therefore, after my departure, it will also not be possible to determine medically that therefore, what really was and is will remain a mystery to the Earthlings. However, I cannot speak of this openly, but only to you, because Svath has already said that I should keep quiet about it. So I will have to dot my I's and cross my T's again on various call-ups. This is well with much of what really was in ancient times, as well as what will be in the future. The archaeologists, paleontologists, etc. alone know everything better than it really was. So much is fantasized together and claimed as it was really like that then, although it never was. In many cases, many of the entire assumptions correspond only to wild fantasies, and even deliberate lies or fraud, which are then taken at face value as truth by those interested in them, and even by experts. Unfortunately, I had to make bad experiences in this respect, because not only was there slander because of this, but there were even family quarrels in the process that certain members of my family proceeded against me with hatred and lies, which were certainly started by from Dietikon. In addition, however, apparently not everything had been recognized and understood as what others had also experienced, such as Sim Yase, then also Professor Hans Bender, as well as more than a dozen other persons, women as well as men, as then, various of them were again afflicted by the same or similar phenomenon and thereby taught better.
Simyase herself told me that, and she said it had happened to her again.
I don't know about that because she didn't tell me about it.
She didn't mention it to you because she didn't want to burden you with it. Besides, you were not present at the center at that time, so she was alone in your workroom, as she explicitly mentioned.
She never said anything to me about that.
It was then when the accident also happened, but she really didn't want to tell you anything. Then later the whole thing was forgotten when the little ones, as you call them, were able to put an end to the evil of these attacks against visitors in your workroom. Only a few months ago, however, she still wanted to inform you about it, so I promised her that I would bring it all to your attention when I had the chance.
Funny, because I always find out what really happened long after an incident. I also learned from Bertie in the pub in Hinterberg, years after the event, that in the kitchen of the pub wanted to stab me in the back. This, as well as in several other cases where witnesses were also present, such as, "But this is no longer relevant, so there is no need to talk about it." What is important, however, is that we say something about the fact that many human beings die in Africa due to lack of water. Many human beings are deprived of water because they are forced to walk for kilometers to carry water in buckets, as a result of the sheer power of human beings, companies and corporations that tap the water of the people. Often the villagers, usually only women and children, have to walk for hours with the heavy and full water buckets and other water containers.
Yes, I know that because the water shortage affects about 3 billion human beings in Africa, according to our findings in this process. The water thieves are big European and American companies, also Asian ones, with China being particularly strong. But I don't want to talk about that now, because I am interested in what you have to tell me about what you experienced with Svath. In particular, for today, I want you to tell me what happens when...
Good, if you must and you have enough time before you have to go.
Yes, it should be, because it is important for me to know what really happened then, and I am all ears for that. Besides, I think you can tell me a lot more when I get back in about 3 months. Florena is also very interested, so we will want to hear your stories together then. But now I want to hear something for a start.
Okay. It's interesting that you use this expression with the ear. But now I want to start with this.
Your explanation is very interesting, which I'm sure would also be important for the human beings around you and for the Conversation Report's readership, because it could thereby...
But I don't think so, and besides, Svath already told me to keep quiet about it. I stick to that, because it is better if the human beings of Earth don't know everything, and moreover too exactly.
Perhaps...
I won't get involved in that, because I know the reactions of the Earthlings, and they are unfortunately completely different from those of human beings, who can be told everything and are capable of coping with such knowledge. This is not to say that I consider Earthlings any less responsible than you Plejarans, but they are not so advanced in the development of their abilities and their mastery of them that they would grasp and understand what is being said in such a way that they would not go crazy. This may sound to many like an arrogant insult, a wicked humiliation, or even a conceit of presumption, presumptuousness, hubris and haughtiness, such as were attributed to the goddess Hubris in ancient Greece. But there is no trace of this, for I only think that everything is not understood, and that is because the human beings of Earth lack the necessary moments of knowledge for this, as well as the possibilities of mentally comprehending everything in such a way that they can recognize and cope with the effectiveness of the whole.
It never ceases to amaze me, for according to your words, you evidently foresee the reactions of Earth humans before they come about. But now something else I have to address. For Ptaah said that Svath noted in the annals that in 2023 you would openly announce what you have experienced and seen together regarding what unpleasantness will occur. What is there in terms of connections, etc., regarding all the world events?
I remember Svath telling me to talk about it, but I don't remember it being specifically 2023. But it is the case that all the years that have passed I have said something here and there that will happen in the future.
Yes, that has always been the case. But you were never so specific in your statements that everything could be understood to a large extent. And besides, to this Ptaah also said that Svath had listed that you would do this in more detail in 2023.
Then it will probably be so. But whether that will really be clever, I would like to doubt that. And besides, it will not bring much in the grand scheme of things with the Earthlings, but certainly trouble for me. This is because with what I would have to say and with what I am now really saying, I would probably step on the toes of the authorities, governments, and those who do not think much of the effective truth, and who also feel attacked. Also the antagonists, who are otherwise already against me, and who scream at me all over the world and accuse me of lies, fraud, and fantasy, etc., will now all the more cry fire and murder because of what I am going to say, and will start anew against me.
You are used to that, and besides, you don't mind, I know, because you don't care what is circulating slanderously against you all over the world.
You just try because I guess there's no other way.
What Svath told you to do 80 Earth years ago, you really should.
Good, you are right. Then I will do what seems necessary, even if I do not like it. But I'm just saying some things that seem important to me, and I'm going to point by point, and I'm going to start by taking up what's brewing around the world first. 1. In the peoples of the whole world, a network has been running underground for several decades, through which independence from the governments is being sought, whereby various groups with underground movements in all states of Europe are particularly involved in this. America is also particularly involved, with those groups behind Trump already appearing in public and acting against the corrupt U.S. government. Trump is the body that is publicly championing the cause without actually knowing that he is doing so, just as elsewhere. For example, in Switzerland, those elements in the government are working underground, trying to break neutrality, just as those who want to force membership of the European dictatorship, the EU. The hammer of these stupid traitors to Switzerland is that they are not even aware that they are being directed and abused by other traitorous elements to do their dirty work. Unfortunately, I do not know who these treacherous whisperers are and what their names are. Otherwise, I would not hesitate to mention their activities and their names. Unfortunately, several of the misguided people in government positions can simply be influenced, because they are uninformed, gullible people, often because they are religious believers and therefore also worldly believers, who instead of clear and conscious thinking and understanding only have a sham and are completely lacking in understanding. On the other hand, there are also groups in the background, especially in Europe and America, who want absolute independence and freedom without a state structure, a liberty world, a world of freedom, while other groups want a world kingdom. It is already bubbling heavily underground in this regard, and the movements have already become strong, especially in America under the leadership, not recognizable to supporters, of Trump. This movement has also been active underground in Switzerland for some time, except that it has not yet officially broken out. But the same thing is also happening in Germany, where various groups are also active and have been appearing semi-publicly for some time. So these underground movements are already at work in the countries of Europe, even with stupid elements in the governments themselves, without the co-governors knowing it, and without having any idea that they are partly controlled by them. Stupid dumb elements even sit on the highest chairs, where they do not belong and only cause mischief, which is not only detrimental to the country, but also to the people, who often only understand whistle and bang from politics, and say yes and amen to everything that is chewed on from above. There is no real thinking, but everything is only based on a sham thinking, which means that everything that is not thought through is simply accepted and thus approved of, even the biggest pile of dung, when it comes to representing what others think is good. This is despite the fact that it may be exactly the opposite and consequently wrong and detrimental. The only important thing is to be able to make one's own yes on the ballot paper and to approve the opinion that others have come up with. Self-thinking is generally frowned upon, because only faith is always the order of the day, which means that the electorate never thinks about the fact that an opinion that is represented and accepted with a yes on the ballot paper is nothing other than a personally invented component. That is to say, an idea of a human being that he brings to bear. In any case, however, such an idea, which the human being makes into an opinion, is always only an assumption, opinion, view, way of looking at things, attitude, conviction, and thus an absolute theory, which is neither proven to be correct nor wrong. If, however, such a theory is put to the vote, then this must be done in such a process that first everything is thought through collectively, down to the last detail, and the pros and cons of the effective content of the idea, that is to say, opinion, are discussed, and a clear ship is created through clear thinking and talking through before it may be put to the vote in the form of a good, according to fixed and correct as well as generally accepted rules. This has to be done by the people themselves or by a many-headed committee, etc., elected by the people, which does what arises and what is required with absolute integrity. But these, of whom they do not know that they are ideally controlled by them, are really the ones who want to bring very great disaster and world domination. The people themselves, who actually only allow themselves to be lulled, therefore do not know what is being played, and that there will be consequences that will bring adventurers, extremists, and degenerates who no longer want anything to do with the state. The savages will radicalize and bring the citizenry to such an extent that they will create motives from the outset that will bring dazzling communities of anarchists and freaking businessmen, esoterics of all kinds, as well as many self-proclaimed freedom fighters, stubborn people, dreamers, dropouts, and extremists of all kinds. And the nations will begin to teem with self-governors, system rejectors, and others who will turn their backs on the state. There will be a counter-society which has already formed and which will spread, just as a private resistance against the respective states will arise, because the ineffectual rulers cannot prevent the idea of those who strive for world domination, as America is doing in a different process, through its desire for hegemony, that is to say, world domination. Everything has already formed underground in all states in Europe and America in such a way that it can no longer be stopped, so that the only question is when it will come to a bang, although it should not be said when that will be. That is also the case here in Switzerland, only here it is still hidden, while in America, everything is already beginning to manifest itself publicly, as also in Germany, where the corresponding groups have already been brewing for decades, such as the Reichsbürgerschaft, which actually emulates the Nazi Reich, as well as others who also emulate the Nazi being. And while I'm at it, it is really not to be wondered at if the human beings go berserk when already the German government, which Ptaah calls a neo-Nazi government, has elements who actually undoubtedly behave and also act like Nazis. This is especially true of Zelensky, but also of Ukraine, a country that has otherwise already made a name for itself as a result of its, to say the least, strangely Nazi-connected behavior over many years. Just as America, addicted to world domination, is also being worked into the hands by granting all possible help to the warmonger Zelensky. America itself is working behind the scenes in the Ukraine war, as I have seen for myself with you. The USA and Germany are diligently helping this big-talking clown in every conceivable way, while the German Foreign Minister Baerbock is also doing everything she can to work into the hands of America and NATO, namely by bullying the leaders of various states and creating hostile sentiment against Russia, thereby evoking an evil mood of war. But that's not all. The German neo-Nazi government is also playing into the hands of the Americans by not intervening in any process against the fact that Germany has been bogged down by America since the end of the Second World War and is still occupied by the U.S. military, and that so-called Germany is still not an independent state, but is under America's war patronage. That is to say, it is a country of occupation. This is not known to the majority of the people. It is true that the Germans have an identity card and a passport to legitimize themselves, but this is really only a pretense, because the so-called Germans are really stateless persons. Note, as can be read in the book by Daniel Prince, Wenn das die Deutschen wussten, edition 2022. There would be a lot more to say in this regard. For example, also with regard to the various so-called state security services. Then also because of France and England, Italy, Spain, and also Switzerland. Then especially because of Sweden, the various former Eastern states, Russia and Finland, etc., as well as with regard to the rest of the world. Only a few names are known to me, which I also do not want to mention, although the cross-dumb Baerbock is a special case, because as foreign minister, she does everything and agitates between many states with her stupid stupidity, and creates even more enmity between the peoples, and promotes war. Besides, too, then there is also AI, that is to say artificial intelligence, which is getting out of hand and will take control of the humanity of the Earthlings in the future, whereby that is to say killer robots will do their evil work. This is because quantum technology will completely slip away from the Earthling and get out of control. Quantum technology is actually based on the fact that it can be used, for example, to explain the basic behavior of energy and matter in the atomic and subatomic range. Quantum technology is actually the basis of so-called modern physics, which is actually concerned with creation energy, but which is still erroneously called spirit. This is probably from a religious point of view, because the Earthling is a believer in religion. In the level of creation energy, that is to say the quantum level, as it can also be called, which for the time being is probably the last realization for physics, is actually the level of the original substance of matter. This level, which precedes matter, has no measurable particles for material technology, and likewise no waves, because it already reaches the area of the outer levels of creation energy, which can no longer be measured with gross material apparatus. This energy level is distributed in the entire space of creation, that is to say in the entirety of all 7 universes, each of which has a different dimension and exists within one another. So we can speak of a quantum field that is in itself superluminously attuned to all forms of creation energy, thus permeating all 7 dimensions of the 7 universes in creation space. This field is actually egg-shaped. The creation with all its 7 dimensions, which are interwoven and independent of each other, is, roughly speaking, egg-shaped. The creation, I will explain, is a gigantic all-consciousness, which is not only single universal, but 7-fold universal and thus all creative, once arising from the absolute absolutum, which developed via the primordial absolutum, then the creation absolutum, super absolutum, and further via the sohar absolutum, then the being absolutum, and finally found its original origin in the nihilo, the absolute nothing. See Book Billy, Primordial Origin of All Existence. Unfortunately, I cannot say much about all that is commonplace in earthly physics, because my knowledge of physical moments only relates to a general knowledge that I learned from Sfath and at school. But the truth is, nevertheless, the whole of creation has nothing to do with the limited cosmos, which alone comprises only the 4th belt of the 7-fold belts of the universe, which again is only one part of the 7-fold creation, which in itself contains 7 universes, each of which exists in a different dimension within the other. The nihilo itself is the unrevealing, the formless, unfathomable, and unspeakable, and the essence of the primal ground of all existence, from which alone everything has emerged. 3. The hammer of the future will be that the Earthling will sink so low in his ethicslessness and moralitylessness that he will eliminate for life sick or physically deformed, as well as invalid human beings, on the one hand, first under the name of euthanasia, and incurably ill, etc., whereby firstly in this respect, seriously ill children are to be transported out of the world by euthanasia, as later also adults who are still alive. Later on, newborns with damaged bodies or consciousness, or later human beings with damaged bodies or consciousness, are to be euthanized because they will be a burden on society in the future. Europe and America in particular will be pioneers in this, with the first steps already being taken in the form of euthanasia, that is to say, assisted suicide, with regard to seriously ill children. Murders and suicides, that is to say suicides, will become daily order, whereby everything will degenerate more and more in this respect, and the perpetrators will be younger and younger, just as the form of the human being's psychological state will become more and more negative, and he will become more incapable of living. He will again be dominated more and more by the addiction of religious and worldly beliefs, as well as by the urge for wealth and to present oneself, and to show oneself off, and to be more than one's neighbor, etc. 4. The demonstrations concerning environmental pollution and climate destruction, etc., are increasing and becoming more and more blatant in their methods and in the destruction they cause, etc. The real evil, however, is neither recognized nor brought up, namely overpopulation, through which everything negative and destructive comes about. Through all the CO2 and methane, like all the other toxins, etc., the climate is affected and damaged, just as all the greenhouse gases are increasingly promoting the demise of the Earth, the destruction of all its ecosystems, all of nature and its fauna and flora, all the waters, the atmosphere, and the extermination of countless creatures of nature. More and more trees are being senselessly felled, and whole areas of forests destroyed for the sake of profit. Although every single tree is already important for the preservation of every living being, the climate, the atmosphere, and oxygen, as well as for the absorption of toxins from the air. In truth, it is already criminal to unnecessarily fell or cut down a tree or shrubbery instead of planting as many trees and shrubs as is at all possible. Earth's humanity, with almost 10 billion human beings, is already about 19 times larger than the number of human beings that planet Earth can support and feed without any problems, namely 500 to a maximum of 530 million, as I have often explained over the years. This also includes the mammals, the animals, as well as the birds, fish, snakes, and the billions of other very diverse creatures, some of which have already been wiped out by the human beings of the Earth by up to 76%. But instead of the Earthlings moderating very violently with the creation of offspring, and submitting to a general and really worldwide controlled birth stop that has become necessary, this is not being done. On the contrary, it is not even thought of, consequently. Instead of Earth's humanity being sensibly reduced, more and more Earth humans are unreasonably bred, as a result of which the Earth and its entire nature must inevitably collapse one day. More human beings, and thus more births, do not only mean that they require more and more energy, whereby even climate-neutral electricity generating machines, etc., produce greenhouse gases, which is usually concealed from the Earthling. Every new Earthling needs more food, clothing, more living space, roads, homes, and so on and so forth, and it needs more trees and other plants that create oxygen, water, and countless other things. But instead of the leaders of the states insisting and strictly endeavoring that a worldwide birth stop, carried out under strict control, takes effect, and that humanity is reduced in a normal process, India's project alone is of no use whatsoever. They themselves continue to produce en masse, irresponsibly, and contribute everything to the fact that overpopulation continues to rise, and continues to rise, endlessly, so to speak. Demonstrations against the increase in greenhouse gases and air pollution, etc., are of no use at all if the demonstrators do not finally realize and understand that overpopulation alone must be removed. This alone made it possible for everything to get out of hand, for the greenhouse effect to arise, for pollution to become rampant, for ecosystems to be damaged and to continue to be damaged. And nature has been and continues to be harassed in every conceivable process, and many genera and species of fauna and flora have been and continue to be wiped out. And all the doings of humanity have been furthered by bloody and all-destroying wars, which, in addition to all the evil, have maltreated and continue to maltreat the atmosphere with polluting gases and poisons through all kinds of poisonous exhaust gases and bombs. But that is not all. For all the above-ground, underground, atmospheric, and underwater atomic bomb tests carried out to date, totaling to my knowledge about 2050, have brought the greatest evils of natural destruction and poisoned and destroyed a great deal of the Earth's interior. As usual, America is also in the lead in terms of nuclear bomb tests with a total of 1,030, while Russia is in second place with 750, but has the most powerful with the Tsar atomic bomb. Since the American nuclear age began in July 1945, more than 2,050 nuclear weapons tests have been carried out. The last one, to my knowledge, was carried out by the crazy dictator of North Korea, Kim Jong-un, on the 3rd of September 2017, as well as various nuclear weapons tests. The consequences in terms of health for human beings and for the environment, all the fault of America, are more than just shocking. All human beings on Earth, and all living beings in general, carried and still carry radioactive substances in their bodies that originate from the fallout of the nuclear weapons tests, and which, how could it be otherwise, increase the risk of cancer in human beings. A great many parts of the Earth's surface have also been radioactively contaminated at one time or another. This is because the demands and all the many desires, etc., of each of the overpopulation are the great evil. Because through the needs and desires all the poisons, greenhouse gases and all the evil environmental destruction, the exploitation of the Earth and its consequences have been produced and will continue to be produced, as well as the destruction of nature, of the waters, of all the ecosystems of the planet, and the longer, the more gradually of the atmosphere, after which all life will inevitably become extinct. It will first of all be the living beings, and they will be wiped out primarily by the human beings themselves. Then the decline will take place in that everything or almost everything will die in this respect, because the foundations of life will be minimized and destroyed to such an extent that survival will only be possible with difficulty, or not at all. The phantasmagoria of space travel is also of no use here, because until it is finally so far that the Earthling can travel in space, which only begins outside the Sol system and not already outside the Earth's gravity, a great deal of time will pass if the foreigners from outside do not intervene and help the crazy Earth's humanity, or enslave and abduct them. Besides, let it be said, the nearest extrasolar system is Alpha Centauri Rigil Kentaurus, and that is little more than 4.24 light-years away. The maximum speed that could be reached in space by a material object, that is to say a rocket, would be the speed of light, which means that such a rocket would need 4.25 years to reach Alpha Centauri, 1 light-year being 9.46 trillion kilometers away. But the Earthlings only have rockets that can travel just under 8 kilometers per second. Moreover, with manned rockets they can only just reach Earth's orbit or the Moon and back, requiring about 30 million horsepower to get them off the Earth. So the Earthlings don't even reach the speed of light, and that's 299,792,458 meters per second. If the Earthlings wanted to get to the Alpha Centauri system, it would take them about 70,000 years by today's rocket standards, but they would have to cover 1.6 billion kilometers a day. A bit long for human lives, which are currently calculated at the upper limit in Central Europe, with an average of 82 years for a man and 86 years for a woman. This, while different values apply from country to country. That is what I would like to say for the time being.
That must also be enough for today because I have to go. Then we will not be able to talk again until July.
But I will say that America is spreading its lousy language all over the world, although I think German is probably the best language. But since you are in a hurry now, I wish you all the best and a good time. Give my regards to the others. Take care and goodbye.
That will be so. Then I will go now. Goodbye.